Hey everybody, welcome to Ask Dr. Testosterone, starring Dr. George Chouliatos. This is the special 100th episode. We've done 100 of these, Dr. George, and for that we got a very, very special guest. I've never been able to get an interview with this man. Now, I've been working for him for 20 years. He is the owner of Advanced Research Media, owner of Advanced Molecular Lab Supplement Company, and of course, editor-in-chief and publisher of Muscular Development, the last print magazine left in bodybuilding. Please welcome Steve Bleckman. What's up, Steve? Good morning, sir.
Hello, Steve. Nice to have you here. Thank you for your presence here. It's a great honor for me, and we kept our promise at the Arnold that we're gonna have a show.
Well, let me tell you, George. First, I want to thank you for your 100th anniversary show for Dr. T, and we're thrilled with the amount of content that you've been able to provide our audience. I mean, authoritative content, that's the big difference, you know, on chemical enhancement, on nutrition, on diet, on supplementation. It's hard to find that on the internet these days, and being a practicing MD as well, it makes you an authority on the subject, and we're thrilled, and we hope we can have another 100 shows the next 2 years. And thank you again, and it's a pleasure to be here.
Pleasure was all mine, and it's a great honor, you know. And I fulfilled my American dream through the muscular development, this great opportunity that you gave me 2 years ago. And then I had the chance of meeting you twice in Vegas, in Columbus also, and I hope at the next Arnold, perhaps on September. So I am now part of the MD family. I met also 3 times Ron. Twice in Vegas. And also Giles. I had it with Giles yesterday, another show about this 100th, anniversary. And yes, Rick Collins also is part of it. So I'm looking forward for more episodes and more columns, of course, at the magazine.
Well, we're looking forward. We had at the Arnold the last time we met in person. We met for breakfast, and we had some really great conversations on chemical enhancement, on nutrition, on supplementation. And it was great. It was a great honor to sit down and really get to know you further. But there's a long history on muscular development. A lot of people don't know the history. For instance, in 1972, Bob Hoffman started what was called Strength and Health. He owned a company called York Barbell in 1972.
Pennsylvania. Yeah,
and Bob was, a pioneer back then. Strength and Health was the #1 weightlifting magazine. He was a pioneer. He was a coach for the Olympic team for many years. He created many gold medal winners, and it wasn't. He was also the first to develop dietary supplements, protein powders. He had York Barbell. He produced in York, Pennsylvania, barbells and weights. And it wasn't till the later years, till 1940, that Your Physique came out by the Weeders. Here were the Weeders just starting out in the business in 1940 in Montreal. And in 1942, they created the Weeder Barbell Company. And Bob was a pioneer in weight training, but it was the Weeders that were responsible in promoting bodybuilding. And what the Weeders did back then was they created an empire, and they took the Bob Hoffman business model. I always believe, take business models and improve upon them. And that's what the Weeders did. They took the Hoffman business model of magazines, barbells, supplements, and then, of course, the events and the Mr. Olympia in 1965. But it wasn't until 1940 at the Montreal Bodybuilding Championships. And at that time, it was specifically the AAU, the IFBB wasn't founded yet. And Joe and Ben sanctioned that event. And Bob Hoffman took away that sanction from the Weeders. And that's how it all started, because after that, Joe and Ben realized that they had to go out on their own and produce their own empire. And that's what they did. They took the Hoffman business model and did it better than anyone. You know, in the later years, you know, in 1982, Jim Mannion left the AAU. He started the NPC News, and that was the biggest amateur bodybuilding organization in the world. And Jim had a tremendous influence. It was like the minor league of Joe Weider's IFBB. And he was an incredible influence after the Weeders, and he started the NPC News, and he's a tremendous influence today with the sport.
Steve, I'm curious, when did you acquire Muscular Development, and how did that all come about?
I acquired Muscular Development in 1986. And at that time, I was with Twin Lab.
Yeah.
What happened was, during those years in the 80s, I was head of product development and marketing for Twin Lab at that time. And we got into the sports nutrition market. And at that time, it was Weider supplements, Metrex, GNC. These were the major players in the sports nutrition category. And we were becoming a major threat. In a year, you know, I came out with Rip Fuel, the first ephedra caffeine combination. Actually, I was first to launch whey protein as whey protein hydrolysates. All the fuel products, amino fuel, Gainer's fuel, those were all hydrolyzed whey protein. I always believed that whey protein had the highest biological value of all proteins.
There was a product with 3 different whey proteins: hydrolysate, isolate, and concentrate. Triple whey fuel.
Yes, we used the hydrolysates. Back then, I thought the hydrolysates, because you broke them into small peptides, that it would be more bioavailable and anabolic. And later on, of course, I launched creatine fuel, which was actually the first. Creatine fuel was in capsule form. It was actually the first creatine monohydrate product on the market at the time. A lot of people thought Bill Phillips was first.
Right.
But in 1992, the first creatine monohydrate product was launched as creatine fuel capsules.
HMB fuel also, yes.
Yes. So at that time, there was a guy named Alan Dolphin that ran Weider Publications, and he was ruthless, you know, but he was an incredible businessman. He was really responsible in building the publishing empire, the Weider publishing empire. And he was able to convince Joe and Ben to, at that time, we were advertising $1 million. Our budget for Muscle and Fitness and Flex were $1 million.
Wow.
And they decided to kick us out of the magazine in 1986.
Wow.
And at that time, you know, I spoke to the rest of my family, and I said that, one, we need to come out with our own magazine. And of course, two, you know, we thought Muscle and Fitness and Flex were an essential facility for us to continue to do business. We thought it would be very damaging by not being in those publications. So we had no choice but to file a lawsuit against the Weider Company. And with that lawsuit, at the same time, I recommended to the family that we come out with our own magazine, and very few were available Strength and Health, which was the original publication by Hoffman. But Muscular Development first came out, Bob Hoffman, in 1964. Mm-hmm. So it was one of the oldest bodybuilding publications. And in 1986, Iron Man was acquired by John Balick at that time from the Raiders, if you remember, that owned it for all those years. Mm-hmm. And I remember John Grimmick. John Grimmick was in 1964. He was the first editor-in-chief of Muscular Development.
Oh, wow.
He was on the cover and everything. John Grimmick was an amazing, he started out as a strength training competitor, and then he became a bodybuilder. But he had an incredible, he was a natural competitor. Yeah. But he had an amazing physique. He was 5'9". He weighed under 195 pounds. And he was the editor-in-chief. And then, later on, in 86, we took over the magazine. And after about 6 months, after depositions and discovery, we appeared in front of the judge, my attorneys, and they said, Twin, we haven't been able to see any damages by not being in the Weider publications. Mm-hmm. We can't sue them for damages because there were no damages, but we didn't know that at the time. We thought that we would lose sales, and we didn't. What we actually did back then was we took that $1 million of the budget for advertising and marketing, and we actually gave it to Jim Mannion in the NPC. Wow. Okay. So we were back then, we were very supportive. In 1992, when Jim started the National Physique Committee, later on, we were a major supporter of NPC contests, NPC magazine. We helped launch that and help finance that. But after 6 months, Alan Dolphin and the Weeders, they felt that they didn't cause any damage. Twin was continuing to grow and be on the rise. So as smart businessmen as they were, they decided to let us back.
Yeah, I was going to say, why would they not want your advertising money? Do they have an abundance that they could just afford to say, yeah, we don't want you guys advertising?
The Weeder supplements were, in part, very important as far as their business model, very profitable component. And they wanted to preserve that leadership. And they saw us become #1 in the industry in such a short time, in a year. And so they wanted to slow us down, and they figured by keeping us, censoring us, just like the censor culture of today, they thought that they could hold us back, and we were able to show that they didn't. And Twin flourished and survived and did very well. And I had a good relationship with Joe over the years. He was a competitor, Joe and Ben. Ben was a great ambassador. Joe was an amazing visionary that had incredible passion and drive. And he took that Hoffman business model and he just did it better, bringing Jim Mannion on board. He brought some really great people, great infrastructure, and he built an empire. And even though we were rivals during those years, I always had the utmost respect for the Weeders, for Ben and Joe. They were competitors, but I always valued and honored entrepreneurship. And they started from their basement, just like we did with the Bleckman family in 1968 in the garage of the Bleckman home. The Weeders did the same thing. They started from nothing. They started from scratch. And that's an amazing accomplishment. And if it wasn't for the Weeders today, I owe a lot to Bob Hoffman, because without Bob Hoffman coming out with Strength and Health and his company and then Muscular Development, we wouldn't have Muscular Development today. So I have to give a lot of thanks to Bob Hoffman and York Barbell. But when it came to bodybuilding, the Weeders were the king of bodybuilding. Even Jim, you know, he came over from the AAU over to the, you know, NPC because the AAU did not promote bodybuilding like it should have. And Jim was committed to promoting bodybuilding, just like the Weeders were. And, you know, they came out with Your Physique in 1940. That was the Weeders' first publication. And then they came out a little later, a couple of years later, with Muscle Power. It wasn't until 1980 that Muscle and Fitness came on the market. And 83, Flex Magazine.
Right.
So there's a tremendous amount of history. And but again, if it wasn't for Joe and Ben, we wouldn't have an industry today. I mean, they were incredible forces, and can't thank them enough. And thank Jim Mannion as well for what he's done as far as an influencer of today. And it's nice to see his grandson Tyler now taking the reins, and wish him very well. And they'll do really fine. He's got a great teacher in Jim Mannion. And I feel confident with the industry moving forward. Bodybuilding is a incredible industry. It's everyone in the world weight trains. More people weight train than play baseball. So I think that there's a tremendous future with bodybuilding. But what's key moving forward is the vision, you know, of the industry. That's important. I think Jake Wood is very good for the industry. I think he's got a lot of vision and passion and drive. And it's nice to see Jay, and I commend him for, you know, with the Olympia this year, and everything they've done. But
I'll hand it over to George in a second, but I have one question for you, Steve. You know, you came up in the 80s and the 90s. It was a very different landscape in the supplement industry and the magazine industry. You know, things have changed so much, and, you know, it was Advanced Research Press for many, many years. Now the company's called Advanced Research Media. We're a multimedia company with many different platforms. We're all over social media, YouTube. We're the last print magazine standing. You know, how were you able to adapt over the years when others certainly dropped by the wayside and couldn't adapt, and they just went out of business? How have you been able to stay relevant and stay part of this industry in 2021 when things are so very different than they were when we were coming up years and years ago?
Again, Ron, you know, it's taking business models and improving on them. And I always believed in the multi-platform approach. Muscular Development is a global brand, okay? And, you know, it was licensed in many countries for many years around the world. Yeah. And it's a global brand. And I felt that we should expand our platforms. We should keep the magazine, but we should also build on our website, which was very important. Because you own your website, you own your magazine, and that's very important, especially what we've learned with the cancel culture and what's happened recently on censoring and that kind of thing. But it can't be taken away from you. But we did further than that. We built the #1 forums, bodybuilding forums in the world, with Noble forums, where people could go to our website. Our website isn't a ghost town. No. We spent money to build it, and we invested in the website because we knew the website was going to be an important component of Muscular Development Media. That's what we're called right now, Muscular Development Media. We're more than just a magazine. We're a multi-platform, multimedia. We also have our own newsletter. We have our social media, Facebook and Instagram. YouTube has been tremendous growth on our YouTube. We have 182,000 subscribers.
Yeah. I'm gonna check on that. I think we're up.
Yeah.
I want to ask you, Steve. I know that Muscular Development.
You know, we look at ourselves with our new name, Muscular Development Media, as a multi-platform. And I believe the more platforms you have, the better reach and you know, as far as the future, we think all these platforms play an important role.
Yeah, Twitter also. I want to ask you, Steve, I know that Muscular Development was the most hardcore magazine in terms of bodybuilding, chemical enhancement also. In relation with Flex, Ironman, or Muscle Mag, that was, I think it was Bob Kennedy, Muscle Mag. Now, do you believe bodybuilding as a sport is a mainstream, or do you care more about the fitness culture and the longevity? So should we introduce this to the mainstream people? Because I think only the 1% of people are doing hardcore bodybuilding. So perhaps we should talk more about anti-aging, longevity, and things like that for the 99% of the market, you know?
Yeah, well, you know, George, you know, years ago, this was in the 90s, late 90s. You know, we came out with we actually changed the name to Muscular Development, as you remember, Ron.
Yeah.
The Natural Muscular Development. That was at the time that we sold Twin Lab, and we were doing a IPO, and you know, I thought that promoting drug-free bodybuilding would appeal more, you know, and benefit. You know, I had to go out on the street and on the road and promote the company on a road show, and you know, it had a bigger potential market cap. At the time, Muscular Development Twin Lab was $1 billion market cap.
Wow.
We were quite a size of the company, and going public, we felt that we could grow. We did an IPO and then a secondary offering. But we tried another reason why we went the natural route, drug-free. In fact,
we still have one.
This was what
Bill Davey,
So
I remember him. Yeah.
looks like men's physique, actually. But you know, when we acquired Muscular Development and we changed the name to late in the 90s to Natural Muscular Development, you know, we were promoting. We moved ourselves from the core of the market to try and expand this natural approach. And I remember being at the Night of the Champions, and Wayne D'Amelia came up to me. This is a funny story. Wayne D'Amelia came up to me in the audience. He says, "Steve, Joe would like a few words with you backstage." So I went backstage, and there was Joe, and Joe was with the bodybuilders, the lineup, ready to go out on stage for the start of the Night of the Champions. And there was Marcus Rule,
Wow.
and all these guys were, you know, massive, you know, great athletes, pros. And Joe looked at me and he says, "Steve, what do you want these guys to look like worms?" Joe loved big bodybuilders,
Yeah.
you know, and he loved the bigger, the better when it came to Joe Weider. And but we did learn, you know, after a period of time that the natural muscular development route, George, was not working for us.
Mm.
You know, we weren't getting the audience, we weren't getting the advertising dollars and revenue. So we decided to go back to our hardcore roots, which we are today, which worked for us, and you know, promote the mass monsters, the freaks.
Yeah.
And, you know, today, everything today is about niche. When it comes to media, everything is niched and targeted type of marketing, and that's what your advertisers want. So muscular development is a targeted niche market to hardcore bodybuilding and bodybuilders, and that's what we're about. And I believe that that's the winning formula for us moving forward. And we'll continue to promote it.
Yeah, just a little bit of trivia there, guys. I don't, maybe I can find it, but one of the covers for All Natural Muscular Development, I believe, was a teenage Kai Green when he was a natural pro at only 18 or 19 years old.
That's right, Ron. Kai was, oh my God, Kai was, I remember seeing Kai before he came over to the NPC and the IFBB. And when I saw him on stage, I said, oh my God, this guy is going to be a superstar. And he was only about 18 years old at the time, Ron.
Yeah. I think he was about 205, 210 at that time, I think, thereabouts.
And he was amazing. And we put him on the cover of Natural Muscular Development.
Yeah.
And, Kai ended up to being one of the greatest, of all time. But Kai had incredible genetics. To be a champion today, you need, of course, genetics, but you also need that passion and drive. And that's the key to the greatest bodybuilders over time. I mean, you look at Arnold. Arnold was, not only did he have incredible genetics, his stature, he was 6'2". He had, and Joe recognized that early, in the late 60s when Arnold came over to this country. He saw the potential of Arnold, and he had the charisma. And as far as bodybuilders, that greatest bodybuilders of all time that had the greatest influence on our sport today, it's got to be Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Yeah.
I mean, here, not only coming over from Austria with that name and barely speak well English, okay, to come over to US, only in America, and win 7 Mr. Olympia titles, and then go on to be one of the highest paid movie stars in the US, and then marry a Kennedy and become governor of the state of California. I mean, that's an incredible accomplishment. And
the American dream.
Yeah,
it's an American dream. And, we have to thank Arnold. He had a tremendous influence. But if you look at all the great Olympias, from Jay Cutler, who won 4 Mr. Olympias, and then also Dorian Yates that won 6 Mr. Olympia titles, and Phil Heath that won 7, and Ronnie Coleman winning 8, and Lee Haney. I mean, as far as, they were all at least 5'9" in height. If you look at it right now, I mean, you need, the future of bodybuilding moving forward is going to be genetics. Look at the sport now, how it's changed. I mean, with the wider shoulders and the tapered waist. And I think that the classic division has helped that, the future.
Yeah.
Sport. I think that was, I commend Jim Mannion for bringing the classic physique division into the sport, because I think that helped the open. Arnold made a big fuss, you remember, at the Arnold Classic about the and the waistline, and bodybuilders, the mentality for many years were, the more drugs, the better. And, as far as I'm concerned, more isn't necessarily better, especially when it comes to growth hormone and insulin. I'm not a fan of insulin, and I think it destroys physiques. It doesn't enhance it. You're better off enhancing the function of your own insulin. And there's many drugs in development right now that are very promising for diabetes and so forth. But if you look at all those Mr. Olympia titles, it would have to be between Ronnie Coleman and Lee Haney, who I would consider the greatest of all time, winning 8. And they both, all the Mr. Olympias were great. I mean, Phil Heath, I mean, to win 7 straight Mr. Olympias like he has is an incredible accomplishment. It's going to be a long time. I hope in my lifetime, anyone wins 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 Mr. Olympias again. It's going to be more difficult than ever. Mm-hmm. And, but I would have to, as far as the greatest bodybuilder of all time, I would have to say that Ronnie Coleman is the greatest competitive bodybuilder of all time, just because of his time period as well.
Mm. Yeah.
You know, with he had such competition between Kevin Lerone and Flex Wheeler, and but I mean, look at Lee Haney. I mean, to win 8 Mr. Olympias in a row,
and retiring at
31 years of age. I mean, is that the most? And he had a family and children.
Yeah.
Lee Haney was amazing. He's an amazing person, and I got to know him years ago for the first time. For years, he was with the Weeder Company, and when he was going for his 8th Mr. Olympia, okay, 6 months out, well, it was about 8 months. You know, I was traveling down to Atlanta and meeting with Lee. I went down. I took like 6 trips to meet with him I was trying to get him to jump ship to come over to Twin. And it took because Lee was loyal, but, you know, I was able to convince him 6 months before going for his 8th Mr. Olympia to join Twin Lab Company.
Yeah.
And that was extremely risky for Lee. But what I tried to do, I tried to put as much pressure on the industry, on the Weeders, by promoting Lee. You know, and, you know, is Lee going to be screwed? Right. Jumping ship. You know, everyone was saying, Lee's done. You know, he's not going to win a Mr. Olympia because he's not a Weeder athlete.
Right.
That was one of the reasons why we started All Natural Muscular Development, was because at that time Joe owned all the athletes. Mm. We didn't have any athletes at that time, so I thought, hey, there's plenty of talent out there around the world that are natural or drug-free bodybuilders. So that was probably the main reason we went to All Natural Muscular Development, was because we didn't have access to the athletes. Joe owned them. It wasn't until the later years, after 2001, that you know, I was able to compete with Joe and Ben on contracts. And in fact, at one time during those years, I think we had a bigger payroll of athletes than Joe and Ben actually at that time. So, you know, we contributed a lot of money over the years to, you know, the industry and to the athletes. I always believed in promoting the athletes. I was kind of always an introvert when it came to behind the scenes, you know, promoting the athletes, promoting my people. You know, I was more interested in building the business and than promoting myself.
That being said, I believe for a long time, MD had something between 20 and 30 athletes under contract at any given time. And for a long time, for at least about a 10-year period, I want to say.
Yes, like I said, at one time we had a bigger payroll than the Weeders did. Because I felt if we're going to compete with Joe and Ben, and that's fine, they're doing what they have to do to win and be number one. But I knew in order for us to be competitive, we had to start bringing athletes on board, and that's what we did. And we had access to some of the best bodybuilders in the industry. So that was a very important period for establishing muscular development as a leader in the industry.
I believe the highest paid athlete was Jay Cutler. I think his contract was super high. And his cover in 2009, when he won back his title, was the best-selling, I guess.
The quad stomp.
Yeah, even today, that was a per banal shot, that stomp shot, and it might be to this very day the classic. I know it's Jay's favorite shot of all time, and it might be one of the greatest cover shots and photographs in bodybuilding history.
By Per Bernal.
Yeah. I can say every time I've seen Jay at events, he promotes 2 events in Boston, or at least he did before this, or anywhere where he's selling his merchandise, he always has a poster of that cover, and he has 8x10s of that cover that he signs and sells to his fans. So it's definitely his favorite photo of himself. I know that.
Yeah, I mean, I know Jay, values that image and that picture. One thing about Muscular Development magazine is, even today, there isn't a bodybuilder today that wouldn't want to be on the cover of Muscular Development. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's the value to every bodybuilder to be on the cover. I mean, even though you have the internet, okay, every bodybuilder wants to be on the cover. I mean, if you go to the homes of past Mr. Olympia champions, you'll see on their wall, Jay has just about every cover on the wall in his home.
Yeah, me too.
Yes. Yeah, it's a stage of history.
Right.
Okay, you can't do that with the internet.
I mean, it's physical and tangible. You can hold it in your hands and turn pages. You can't replace that with anything digital. You just can't.
That's cool.
Yeah, so it's great that Muscular Development, we've grown tremendously. We're Muscular Development Media right now, but we still have the magazine, and to be able to put these great champions over the years and moving forward and promoting the industry and the pro and amateur athletes of our industry, it's an honor. And I think it's important, and we'll keep it as long as people want it, people want to read it. And again, it's part of all our platforms. Yeah. All our platforms are important with Muscular Development Media. We're building all of them. Yeah. That's what makes a good media company, is building all its platforms, not sitting still, growing and moving ahead to the future. And that's what Muscular Development Media is all about. And you can't do that, of course, without a great team. Ron, thanks for your great service.
Oh, you're welcome.
20 years this year.
Yeah. Do you know what, Steve, do you know what my first MD article was?
No, what was it?
It was an interview with a porn star, Janet Jameson. It had been passed over to me by Josh Brown, aka the Sandwich, because he didn't like to work too much at the time. And the reason I remember it so vividly is I was talking to her manager, setting up the interview when the first plane hit in 9/11, that very moment.
Oh my God.
He said, oh my, and he got quiet and he said, turn on your TV. I said, what's going on? He goes, just turn on your TV. And I walked over and turned on the TV, and that was the first interview. It was and I actually have the Sandwich to thank for bringing me to MD, because he started out subcontracting columns that he didn't want to do for whatever reason. I did that, and then the Jenna was my first byline, first thing I ever had published in Muscular Development, early 2000.
Wow. As time flies, Ron. I mean, this is my 35th year. Wow. With Muscular Development, and I can't believe how the months go by, how the years go by.
I know. And
it's 35 great years. I love the industry. It's a great industry. And I'm looking forward to continuing to contribute and help support it. And
I'm curious, Steve, you were out of the supplement industry for a time, I believe. You sold Twin in the late 90s. Was it 97, 98, somewhere around there?
We sold Twin in 98. Okay, and I left Twin in 2001. Okay. Remember that Muscular Development was owned by Twin.
Right.
So they had to divest it. They had to put it up on the market, because you got to remember we were a public company. They couldn't just give it to me, so they had to list it and do an auction for other bidders to compete and on the bidding for muscular development. And it just so happened, you know, different potential players that were interested, but they would call me and they would say, Steve, would you come with it? And I said, I wouldn't be coming with the magazine if you acquire it. And that kind of discouraged them a little bit. And so I put a bid in, and I was the highest bidder. And from 2001, went on to build muscular development. About a year later, we came in 2003. We came out with the Fitness RX for men, Fitness RX for women magazines, and those did very well. We still have their websites, Fitness RX for women, Fitness RX for men, and but that's how it all happened. As far as the separation of Twin and relinquishing muscular development to me. And then it's, you know, the whole story about how we diversified into a media company today. Things have changed quite a bit, but it's fun. And again, you know, we have a great team, and you're only as good as your team, I always believe. And you could have great players on a team, but if you don't play as a team, you know, teamwork is the key to success. I remember the Yankees, they had the highest payroll, but they didn't always have the championship team because a lot of these players on the team were not held for the best interest of the team. They were into promoting themselves rather than the company and the team itself. And again, if you could, even in business, if you could, leadership is CEOs and leaders that could get their players, their employees to work together and build a great product. That's what it's all about today, not only in media, but also in business to be successful.
Steve, what made you decide to get back into the supplement industry? Because you started Advanced Molecular Labs a few years ago. You know, you had been very successful with Twin Lab. Then you got away from supplement industry for, I don't know, was it about 15 years that you were out of the industry?
Yeah, I was out of the industry because I had my work cut out for me, you know, building the media company. And, you know, it wasn't until a couple of years ago that I decided to get back in with Advanced Molecular Labs. But I don't use muscular development media to promote Advanced Molecular Labs because I don't want there to be any conflict of interest for our advertisers. So Advanced Molecular Labs, which is very successful, advancedmolecularlabs.com, but it's an entity on its own. It functions independently. I develop all the products for the company. But I could give my full commitment, you know, to muscular development media and my sponsors and advertisers to give 100% to our platforms and media company to promote their brands and their products.
Right. Interesting.
One other thing, as far as the future of bodybuilding, which, you know, Rami was no surprise at the Olympia this year. I mean, we knew. I remember seeing Rami the first time when he came to New York to compete in the New York Pro, and Ron, I think we looked at each other and we couldn't believe our eyes.
Yeah, it was crazy.
On stage. Yeah, unfortunately, it took like 6 years, you know, for him to develop into a Mr. Olympia. We thought it was going to be much sooner because of his stature and presence.
Right.
But no one was surprised when Rami walked on stage. I knew once he came to Arizona with Dennis James, and of course was working with Chad Nichols as well, I knew that, watch out, he was going to be on. Okay. And I believe in business models, you know, if it works, it's not broken, stick with it, make it better.
Yeah.
Okay. What Rami needs to do, if he stays healthy and comes in condition, okay, I would recommend he get an apartment next to Dennis James.
I think Dennis has a spare room set up for him.
And come out here to Arizona and, you know, not 3 weeks, but I would say 4 to 8 weeks.
Yeah.
Rami hasn't even near his potential yet. Okay. You know, with those extremely wide shoulders, that tapered waist, those flaring quads. I mean, he is going to, I don't see anyone out there that's competing right now that could beat him if he's healthy and he comes on. And he needs, sometimes you need that coach, you know, to help you through it. And I think him and Dennis are a great fit. And I think for this year's Olympia, if he does that and even comes in earlier, I think he's going to be tough to beat. Now, how many can he win? It's hard to say. It's up to Rami potentially. You know, he could win. You know, it's going to be tough. Like I said, in my lifetime, to see someone that wins 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 Mr. Olympias again. Okay, it's going to be very tough. But what you're going to see in the future is Rami is the standard right now. And genetics are going to play more of a role than ever before in the future of this sport. If you could pick your own parents, that would be the best of both worlds. But of course, you can't. Okay? But it's a fact that genetics, you know, you have to be over 5'9". Phil Heath was 5'9". That's the lower height level. You have to be 5'9" and above. I think that starts there, but you need great genetics. You need great genetics. And the key is longevity. Lee Haney, okay, had longevity. He trained smart. Okay, Ronnie believed in heavy duty training. He put a tremendous stress on his body, I mean, and burden, and as a result, you know, look at his health problems today. You know, you could train smart. You need to have longevity. You have to train smart. We know, if you look at the scientific literature over the last 5 years, okay, the literature has shown that volume training is what creates muscle hypertrophy the best. Not even failure training, it's volume. And bodybuilders have known this for years. Why do they train 2 body parts a day, 2 sessions a day? Look at Arnold, the volume train that he did back then. Volume training has proven itself to work. But the key of training of the future is not getting under a barbell with 750 pounds, okay, like Ronnie did. Okay, that's not going to create longevity in the sport. You got to train smart to have longevity. And then, of course, you need the drive mentally, but also, I believe that the future with chemical enhancement, I think you're going to see in the next few years some really incredible changes in the pharmaceutical industry. There's a category of drug development right now. They're called sarcopenia drugs. These are drugs. Sarcopenia is a muscle wasting disease that happens with age. And it lowers strength and muscle hypertrophy, and it causes frailty. And it's a major cause of mortality with the elderly and death. But in order to prevent that, we know weight training is effective against preventing sarcopenia. So it's important to start early when you're young, especially in middle age. And as you get older, you shouldn't wait till you're old, of course. But the whole new drug development, for instance, there's a company called Regeneron. Okay, Regeneron has become well known in the past year or so during COVID. they're responsible for the monoclonal antibody cocktail that has been shown to be very effective if it's given early in the progression of the disease.
Stem cells.
Yes, it's a monoclonal. These antibodies are the most promising area of treatment outside of the vaccines moving forward. In fact, I get my vaccine next month for the first time.
Oh.
I'm 67, so
George already got his.
I'm getting tomorrow my second dose.
Which did
Pfizer.
Oh, you got the Pfizer. I recommend the mRNA over the DNA vaccine.
It's the new school, yes.
Because you know, the Johnson & Johnson isn't available yet, and AstraZeneca are here. Those are DNA-based vaccines.
J&J will be one dose.
One dose, but we already know because of the variant, the South African variant, that J&J's got to start producing a booster shot. So eventually, if you take the J&J, even though it's one shot, you're still going to have to get a booster, and they're planning on that. They're working on it. Okay. You got to remember that when you freeze these vaccines, you need to freeze the mRNA vaccine because they're very unstable. If you want more shelf life, then the DNA vaccines are more effective for that. And that's why Johnson & Johnson has gone that direction, because you only have to refrigerate it. You only need one dose, but you're going to need a booster probably. But the thing with the mRNA, Johnson & Johnson and Moderna, the Moderna and the Pfizer, is that it doesn't get into the nucleus of the cell.
No.
It doesn't attach itself to the DNA.
No.
Okay, the DNA vaccine, okay, which Johnson & Johnson, AstraZeneca, okay, it attaches, they try to develop it so it doesn't, but there's still some unknown, long-term safety of these DNA. So I look, would I take the Johnson & Johnson? Of course. Would I take the AstraZeneca? Of course I would if it was available. They're all, I believe, safe, but if I had a choice of one or the other, of course, I would go with the mRNA, which is the Pfizer and Moderna, and that's what I would take. But getting back to the sarcopenic drugs of the future is Regeneron, who's doing this monoclonal antibody that President Trump received early in his COVID illness. They're working on myostatin inhibitor through monoclonal antibodies. Just think, now they're in phase 2 right now in drug development and drug trials. Next year they're going into phase 3. Okay, so I believe this Regeneron myostatin. We know that if you could inhibit myostatin, it has tremendous effects in animals and humans. That it's an inhibitor of muscle hypertrophy and muscle growth. If you could inhibit myostatin, you could increase hypertrophy. So there are other pharmaceutical companies. Novartis is working on a myostatin inhibitor. Also, an area of drug development for sarcopenia is SARMs, select androgen receptor modulators. And you're going to see these approved along with myostatin inhibitors in the next couple of years as what's called sarcopenic drugs. And people that will be able to, they won't be controlled substances. They'll be RX. You have to go through your physician to get them, but they will be available I predict in the next 2 to 3 years.
Oh, good.
So that will have an incredible effect on anabolic new drugs to treat aging and frailty and sarcopenia, along with weight training, of course.
Steve, do you think bodybuilders, young healthy bodybuilders, are going to jump all over those drugs too?
Oh, for sure.
Of course we will. Oh my goodness.
Yeah,
George.
but one of the nice things is, you know, with the drug reform you had, with the new drug reform in Oregon, where you had Rick Collins on.
Decriminalization, yeah.
Decriminalization, you know, that's going to have a tremendous effect moving forward in certain states.
Do you think we'll open the Pandora's box?
Excuse me?
Do you think this decriminalization in Oregon will open the Pandora's box and the abuse of AAS and PEDs?
You know, I'm concerned about certain drugs. I believe the most dangerous drug that people could take is cocaine. The effect of cocaine, what cocaine effect on the brain, the central nervous system, and the heart is the most dangerous, and that should be controlled. I believe. Okay. As far as decriminalization, it's, you know, I know people that you know, were on OxyContin because of osteoarthritis, and then when they scheduled OxyContin and you couldn't get it anymore, you know, a lot of people went to heroin. And
Oh, the Mayo.
Yes, and then fentanyl, you know, as well. Which,
Michael Jackson died of oxycontin.
You know, killed millions of people. I don't believe most of these people, heroin addicts that are out there, are not heroin addicts because they want to be a heroin addict.
Right.
Okay. And they need, it's an illness, they need to be treated. Okay, not locked up in jail.
Yeah.
Okay, someone that distributes these drugs, that's a different, you know, you're not going to see, Dr. George, the legalization of these drugs.
No, no.
That's not going to happen. But as far as the bodybuilding community is, as far as chemical enhancement, it does play a role in our industry. If we could get to a point where the bodybuilders, you know, as far as taking chemical enhancement drugs, if we could assure them that the quality of those drugs are present and the effectiveness, and that they could go to their doctor and get their blood work done. And it's like, even with sarcopenia, like I was talking about, doctors for sarcopenia, some patients will offer testosterone replacement. Okay, some, especially those that are very low risk of, let's say, cardiovascular disease or and so forth. They'll be treated, you know, there's side effects, more side effects than these sarcopenic drugs, but if used appropriately, the benefits could outweigh the risk. And these people could be monitored, their blood work. And just think, if bodybuilders today, you know, were able to go to their doctor and get, you know, monitor markers of inflammation and all these tests and toxicity, you know, in the body. I mean, because, you know, people with bodybuilders today are going to, especially with Rami, the standard, are going to try and get bigger. The key is getting bigger safely, longevity, smart, and so it's important that that for the future of the sport, that it's safer.
Right. George, it's we've been going for an hour, so I want to give you the final word, sir, because you are Ask Dr. Testosterone.
Well, I want to express my gratitude to Steve for everything he does. He's done to me and for his presence today at the show. It was a great talk, you know, we had. And I'm looking forward to see both of you at the next Arnold, I guess. Stay safe and stay healthy, you know, about this COVID pandemic. And I hope this thing will end by summer, so we return back to normality.
Well, George, I want to say thank you again for all that great content over the last 2 years. And I look forward to the next 100 shows. And I can't thank you enough. You know, you know, to be able to share good quality, authoritative information, you know, is a good service to our community, online community. And of course, Ron, thank you for all your great service over the last 20 years. And again, you know, I always believe it's the best teams that win, and we have the best team, and we're only striving to make it better every day, and that's with Muscular Development Media. Build all our platforms, build them better, and that's what we're all about moving forward.
And I just want to throw out the team. The full team is Jen, Alan D, Alan G, Angela, Todd, Giles over in the UK. We have a fantastic team that you've assembled, Steve, and George. I couldn't get this interview for years and years. You made it happen. So I don't know how you did it, George, but thank you. So that's it, everybody. This has been the 100th episode of Ask Dr. Testosterone. We had special guest Steve Bleckman. Great show. Thanks, everybody, for watching. We'll see you with some more questions and answers next time on Ask Dr. T. Have a good day.
Stay well, everybody.